Are you tired of ChatGPT always going down? Do you want to use the GPT 3.5 Turbo and even the newest GPT4 language models to get the best responses? In this video, I'll show you how you can set up your own version of ChatGPT using OpenAI's API. All of the code for this video is in the description below. Let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is sign up for OpenAI. I actually have a blog post that goes through all the steps of developing this application, so make sure you check that out in the description. So once you sign up, you're going to see this page. At the top, if you want to, you can join the GPT4 API waitlist. This will let you use the newest GPT4 language model with their API. So just to get an idea on how we're going to use this API and how to develop applications for this, let's go through their Quickstart example. So you can see in the introduction, we're going to be giving it a prompt, so an input, and then it's going to give us back a completion, an output based on the prompt that we give it. And all we're going to do is create an API call for that. So let's go down to build your application. For this, we're going to be using Node.js. So let's git clone their Quickstart repository. Go to your terminal and just copy the command. And this will make a folder called OpenAI Quickstart Node. And then we're going to cd into it, Quickstart Node. And you can see now we're in the directory. The next thing we're going to need to do is add your API key. So once you're in the directory, type this command, cp.env.example and then env. And this is going to create an env file that's going to store our API key. So from the OpenAI website, you want to click create new secret key. Now copy and paste this and make sure to store it somewhere safe because you're not going to be able to copy the full thing again. Open this directory that we just made in any text editor or IDE of your choice. I'm going to use VS Code for this. So now you can see we have the two .env files. And if I click on .env, you'll see that it has a variable OpenAI API key where you're going to paste this new API key that you just generated and save the file. Now go back to your terminal and all you're going to have to do now is run the app. So type npm install and it's going to install all of the required stuff. And then you're going to type npm run dev and this will start your app on localhost with port 3001. Now let's go there and you can see that it has the name my pet and you can enter any animal you want. So let's generate a name for a giraffe. So just type in giraffe here and click generate names. And there you go. It generated 3 names for a giraffe: Super Stretch, the Mighty Neck, and High Flying Giraffe. So this is OpenAI's Quickstart example. And the reason I walk you guys through this is so you can create your API key and have this .env file because we're going to use this in our own custom chatbot app. Okay, now it's time to make our own chatbot app. So the first thing we want to do is create our project directory. So I'm going to type make directory and then OpenAI Chatbot. Now that we've made this directory, let's cd into it. So cd OpenAI Chatbot. Now we're in this directory. And this directory is empty. So we're going to have to install a few things and create a few files. So for this, our stack is going to be Node.js as well as vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And this is just for simplicity's sake. So let's initialize an npm app. Type npm init and we're just gonna do default. And then for entry point, type app.js. And there we go. Just do default for the rest and then type yes. And this is gonna generate a package.json file, which means now our project is a Node project. Let's create the files we need. First, we're gonna make another folder called public. Okay, now we have the public folder. Now cd into this folder and we're going to create the rest of the folders that we need. So make a JavaScript folder, so make directory.js and cd into that JavaScript folder and we're going to make a file called script.js and go back and now in the public folder we're going to make a file called index.html and go back another one and in the root of the directory we're going to make a file called app.js and our .env file. Now that those files are all created, you should have a directory that looks like this: app.js here, package.json, and then a public folder. Inside that public folder, you have index.html, and then a JS folder with script.js. Now, after all those files are created, we just want to open that directory in any text editor or IDE of your choice. Again, I'm going to be using VS Code for this. So open your index.html file and we're going to start off with a template. So just type exclamation point and press tab and this will give you that nice HTML template. If you don't have this option, you can just copy this code. So for title, we're just going to put my chatbot. And for CSS, we're not actually going to have a separate CSS file. We're going to be using Bootstrap classes. So just copy and paste this or just type it out from the video. This is also on my blog if you want to just copy and paste this. So go head over there and follow along. For the HTML, I'm just going to paste from my blog again. I recommend you doing the same. I'm not going to be typing out line by line. So let's paste this in and I'll kind of explain what's going on here. We're actually going to start from the bottom. The first script tag is our script.js that we made here. This is going to be the client-side logic of handling, the button press and then sending that API call to the backend server. This script tag is just the bootstrap JavaScript stuff. And then here we kind of have our interface. And if you open index.html, you'll actually notice that we have our interface here. So we have a title, my chatbot. We have a little box for chat history. And then we also have a text area where it says you, and this is where we're going to type our prompt. Once this prompt is submitted, we just click submit prompt, and then OpenAI will take our input and give us an output, and then it'll store it in chat history. So how do we do that? Well, we need to set up the backend. So remember that app.js file that we made? Let's go back to that. This is going to be our node backend. So back in your terminal, get back to the root directory where we have app.js. We're going to install a few things. So we want to install OpenAI's npm package. So let's do npm install OpenAI and then -- save. We also want to install Express, and this library will handle all of our serving HTML and stuff like that. It'll basically turn our node app.js into a HTML server. And finally, we want to install something called .env. And this will help us use the .env file in our backend. Now that all of those are installed, let's go back to our .env file. Go back to the Quickstart that we did, and you're going to copy paste this OpenAPI key. You also want to add another variable called OpenAI org. This is your organization key. And to find this, you can just go to your organization settings. And you can see here we have the organization ID. Now your env file should look like this. Let's create our app.js. I'll go line by line on this one so you can kind of understand what's going on. The first thing we want to do is import OpenAI. So let's do const OpenAI require OpenAI. Next thing is you want to require .env. So you do .env.config. And then that will import our .env file and let us use our variables. Const express equals require express. And you also want to import path. And let's create our app. So app is going to be equal to express. And then let's create a port variable. And you can set this to whatever port you want the server to run on, but I'm going to use 8080, or if you run this on some type of cloud server or Heroku, you can add a statement here that says or process.env.port. So if any service is providing that, it'll use that instead. Now that we have those imports, let's set up some of our app use statements. So first we want our app to use express.json, and this will parse our requests to the backend. And you also want express.static and then set this to public. And this basically says that we're using this public folder as our static root directory. So Express kind of has a file system that it looks for that to determine where all your files are located. And we also want it to use this URL encoded and then extended true. Okay, there we go. Let's configure OpenAI. And again, if you don't want to type this line by line, the code is available on my blog and on GitHub. So go head over to my blog and see what's up over there. And you can just copy and paste the code from there and follow along. For this, we want to create a configuration variable. So set that equal to OpenAI.configuration. And then we're going to provide a couple parameters here. So organization is going to be equal to our variable in the .env file. So process.env.openai_org. And our API key is going to be process.env.openai API key. Okay, there we go. Now we want to create a new variable called OpenAI API, and you're going to set this equal to OpenAI.openAI API, and we're going to pass in our configuration object that we just created with our parameters. Now that's it for the OpenAI setup. Now let's create a couple routes for our server. So to serve our front end, the index.html, we want to do app.get and then slash. So any get request should serve our HTML file, and you're going to pass rec and res, so request and response. Okay, so for this, we just want to do res.sendFile, pass in path.join, and then underscore dir name, and our index.html. There we go. So basically any get request from the browser is gonna send this index.html file and render our interface. Now we also want a post request that will handle sending the prompt and getting the response back. So let's do app.post, and let's just make this route /chat. We're gonna do the same thing here. Rec res, provide it a function, and we're actually going to make this route async. So provide that, add a semicolon. So first variable is going to be messages, and we're We're gonna do messages equals rec.body.messages. And basically this is going to be the prompt that we pass in from the interface. Next, we want the model to be rec.body.model. And our temperature is gonna be rec.body.temp. And basically what the temperature is how random you kind of want the model to respond with. And then model is the type of model we're using. And you're gonna be able to change this if you want. At the end, I actually have a challenge. You can actually add your own switcher and create kind of like a switcher if you wanna switch between the models. Now let's actually create our request. So we're gonna do const completion equals, and then await OpenAI API dot create chat completion. And we're gonna pass in our parameters. So model, messages, and temperature. We're gonna set this equal to temp. Okay. And if you didn't know this, by the way, this is kind of a shorthand of saying just model is equal to model. So if they're the same variable, you can just shorten it by saying model. Okay, now that's our request. Now all we want to do is send the response back to our client. So we're going to do res.status. So 200 means okay, everything worked out. And then .json. And then let's set our result to completion.data.choices. Now that that post is done, finally, all we're gonna do is start the server. So app.listen, and then we're gonna provide it a port. So listen on this port, and then another function. And we're just basically gonna say example app listening on port, and then we're gonna provide our port variable. Okay, there we go. That's all we need for app.js. This is our whole backend. Now, if you go back to your terminal and we do node app.js, and it'll say example app listening on port 8080. If you actually go to your browser and you type in localhost 8080, you can actually see the client, the index.html is being served. Now we're actually almost done. Lastly, go to your script.js file, and this is where we're gonna hook everything up. Go to my blog to copy paste this code. I'm not gonna type it out line by line, but I will explain what it does. So let's paste this in. The first couple of lines are just getting references to these elements in the index.html file. So you can see submit, response, user input. All of these are elements with those IDs. So you can see this button has an ID of submit. This has an ID of spinner. So that's what that is doing. Now here I have a prompt responses array. This is where we're gonna store our chat history. And this is a function called generate response. This is where we're gonna take the input and actually send the API request. And you'll see this when you click submit, there's gonna be a spinner. So it kind of gives it a loading effect while you wait. So you know something is happening. Now we take that input, and using the fetch API, which is built into JavaScript now, we just make a post request with our parameters. So you can see we provided GPT 3.5 turbo, and the messages we're gonna send. So, and you can give it different roles as well. So you can do like user or assistant, and then the temperature. So I think this goes from 0 to 1. Once we get that, we await the response, and then we store this response in the array, and then we append this response in HTML element, and you'll see that in chat history. And then we assign the submit button on click method to this function. So whenever someone clicks the submit button, that's what's gonna happen. So now that that's all there, let's go back to our server and let's try it out. So let me give it a prompt. What color is the sky? And you can see when I click submit prompt, it gives like a little loading, and there we go, we got a response. As an AI language model, I do not have the ability to see. However, the sky appears blue to humans during the day and black with stars visible at night. So I can ask it another question like, give me 3 ideas for a birthday party. And you can see it will give me the 3 ideas. There we go. It just appends it to chat history. Now, of course, you can make this look better, and you can use this code however you want. This is free to use, free to distribute. Basically, you can use this however you want. So yeah, that's it. We created our own chatbot. A challenge you can do if you want, go to the Bootstrap docs and see if you can add some sort of drop down to select the different models, or maybe even a slider for the temperature. See if you can do that. So yeah, that's it. Again, go to my blog if you want all the code for this. You can basically use OpenAI's API for anything that you want. You can create any type of AI app now. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.